Imagine sitting on a fortune that is absolutely unfathomable. Wealth that would change not just your life, but the lives of your children and grandchildren forever. But there is a small problem. You can't get to the money. Not because the bank went bust or you forgot your password. No, it's much worse. You know exactly where the money lies. It lies under tons of stinking, rotting garbage just a few kilometers from your house. And the people guarding this trash simply won't let you dig, no matter how much money you offer them. That sounds like the plot of a bad disaster movie, but for a man from Wales, this is the bitter reality he wakes up to every single morning. This is the story of probably the most expensive mistake in human history. The year is 2009. The global economy is still licking its wounds after the financial crisis, and a strange new phenomenon is just beginning to gain a foothold on the internet. A digital currency called Bitcoin. Back then, this wasn't a big deal for investment bankers or tech billionaires yet. It was a playground for nerds and computer geeks. One of these pioneers was James Howells, an IT engineer from Newport, Wales. James was fascinated by the technology behind Bitcoin. He was one of the very first miners on the network. He let his laptop run, solving complex mathematical puzzles, and was rewarded with digital coins. It was simple. It was almost effortless. Within a very short time, James accumulated 7,500 to 8,000 bitcoins. At the time, these coins were worth almost nothing. Maybe enough to buy a pizza if you were lucky. But James eventually stopped mining. Why? Because his girlfriend was annoyed. The laptop fan was running at full speed at night, the device got hot, and it made a hell of a noise. So, James thought family peace was more important than this new hobby money, and he turned the program off. A year later, in 2010, a small mishap occurred. James spilled a glass of lemonade over his laptop. To save what could be saved, he dismantled the computer into its individual parts. Some parts were broken, others could still be sold or reused. However, he kept the hard drive, a small 2.5-inch disk. He knew his private keys for the bitcoins were stored on it. At the time, the coins were still hardly worth anything, but James thought, who knows, maybe they'll be useful someday. He put the hard drive in a drawer in his office and forgot about it for the time being. We jump forward to the summer of 2013. James is clearing out his office. It's time for a big spring clean, even if it is already summer. Chaos reigns in his drawer. Old cables, broken mice, electronic waste. And there they were. Two almost identical-looking hard drives. One of them was empty and meant to be thrown away. The other contained the access to the 8,000 bitcoins. James was distracted, maybe tired, maybe just in a rush. He took one of the hard drives and threw it into a black trash bag. The next morning, he asked his partner to take the bag to the dump since she was going out by car anyway. It would have been his job, but he didn't want to make an extra trip. She took the bag, drove to the landfill in Newport, and threw it into one of the large containers for general household waste. In that moment, the fate of a fortune that would soon reach astronomical heights was sealed. Months passed. James didn't think about the trash bag anymore. But then, towards the end of 2013, the Bitcoin price exploded. The currency was suddenly on everyone's lips. The price rose to $100, then to $200, and climbed ever higher. James remembered his old mining days. He did a quick calculation in his head and his heart skipped a beat. If he still had those 8,000 coins, he was suddenly a millionaire. Full of anticipation, he ran to his drawer to look for the hard drive. He rummaged through the cables, through the old USB sticks, through CDs. He found the hard drive he had kept. He connected it to his computer, but the drive was empty. A cold shiver ran down his spine. James stared at the monitor. It dawned on him slowly but surely. He had kept the wrong hard drive. The empty drive was safe in his drawer. The drive with the millions lay somewhere in the Newport landfill, buried under the waste of the last few months. The feeling James must have had in that moment is hard to describe in words. It is that mix of nausea, panic, and pure disbelief. He searched everywhere, hoping he was wrong. He searched backup files, old email accounts, USB sticks. He actually found something on an old stick, but unfortunately no bitcoins. It was just junk data. The hard reality was inescapable, the hard drive was gone. When the Bitcoin price reached its first major peak of over $1,000 in 2013, James's hard drive was already worth around $8 million. James couldn't stay silent anymore. He had to confess to his partner. One can only imagine the conversation at the dinner table. Honey, do you remember that trash bag you took away a few months ago? There was just $8 million inside. Naturally, the situation put an extreme strain on the relationship, but James now had a mission. He went to the Newport City Council. He went to the landfill. He spoke to the facility manager. He explained the situation. "I threw away a hard drive," he said, "and it's worth millions. I need to go in there and find it." The landfill manager was initially even helpful. He explained to James how the landfill was organized. The trash isn't just piled up randomly. There is a grid system. Based on the date the bag was thrown in, one could theoretically narrow down the area. That was the good news. The bad news was that household waste in Newport is compacted in layers. Thousands of tons of new waste now lay over the trash from 3 or 4 months ago. But James saw a chance. The area was about the size of a football field. Deep, yes, but not infinite. He wanted to dig. But then came the first major setback. The Newport City Council said no. A clear, hard no. The city's reasoning sounded logical, but for James, it was a nightmare. First, they said, an excavation would be a huge environmental risk. Landfills produce methane gases and toxic leachates. If you break open the compacted layers, these toxins could escape and contaminate the surrounding area. Second, the cost for such an operation would be immense. And third, there was no guarantee the hard drive would even still work, even if it were found. Hard drives are sensitive devices. Moisture, pressure, toxic chemicals, garbage is not a good place for high-tech electronics. James was not discouraged. He argued that data recovery experts can work miracles. An example of this is the hard drive from the Space Shuttle Columbia, which survived the crash from space and the data was recovered. If a hard drive can survive a crash from space, then perhaps it can survive a few months under Welsh household waste. Years passed. The Bitcoin price fluctuated, but the long-term trend went in only one direction: up. In 2017, Bitcoin reached almost $20,000. James's fortune in the dump was now worth over $100 million. With every price increase, James became more desperate and his plan more professional. He assembled a team, an Avengers team of treasure hunting, if you will. He brought investors on board, hedge funds from Switzerland and Germany who were ready to cover the costs of the excavation. We are talking about a budget of $10 to $11 million just to dig through trash. He contacted artificial intelligence experts. The plan was pure high-tech. The idea was this: Boston Dynamics robot dogs would patrol the grounds at night and act as security so that no unauthorized treasure hunters would show up with shovels. During the day, huge excavators would remove the trash layer by layer. This trash would then be placed on conveyor belts and sent through scanners. An artificial intelligence, specifically trained to recognize hard drive components, would scan the trash. A mechanical arm would sort out anything that looked like a hard drive. James promised the city of Newport a golden deal. If they let him dig, he would gift the city 25% of the value found. At the peak prices of that time, that would have been tens of millions for the city coffers, money that could have been used for schools, parks, or social services. He also promised to give every single citizen of Newport £50 as compensation for the inconvenience. But the city administration remained stubborn. Their standpoint was, the license for the landfill does not allow for excavations. The risk is too high. And furthermore, and this is an important legal point, the city argued that James had abandoned ownership of the hard drive the moment he threw it in the trash. Legally speaking, the trash in the landfill belongs to the city of Newport. James's condition increasingly worsened. His relationship finally broke apart. His ex-wife said in interviews that James could only talk about this hard drive. It was like a curse. He couldn't work, he couldn't move on. He stared at the charts and watched himself get richer every day, but only theoretically. He was a multimillionaire who couldn't afford a coffee. Interestingly, a sort of guerrilla war developed over the years between James and the city council. James tried everything. He presented PowerPoint presentations, he brought in environmental protection experts who confirmed that the landfill could be opened safely. Nothing helped. The council even refused to meet with him anymore. They only communicated in writing and blocked everything. In his desperation, James announced in 2024 that he would sue the city administration. His argument was that the city is unlawfully withholding his property. He demanded damages amounting to the value of the bitcoins at that time, which corresponded to almost $500 million at that point. $500 million. That is a sum that could drive a small city administration into ruin. It is an absurd situation. On one side stands a man who made the biggest mistake of his life and is trying to correct it. On the other side stands an authority clinging to regulations and afraid of setting a precedent. Because if they allow James to dig up the trash, who comes next? Someone who lost their wedding ring? Someone who accidentally threw away cash? A dump is not a lost and found. But there is another aspect that is often overlooked. The ticking time bomb. Hard drives don't last forever. There is a phenomenon called bit rot, where the magnetic charge on the disk degrades over time. Add to that the corrosion from the toxic fluids in the trash. Even if James got permission tomorrow and found the drive the day after, experts say the probability that the data is still readable might be 80 or 90%. But with every year that passes, that chance drops. James has since forged plans for what he would do if he ever gets the money. He doesn't want to keep it all for himself. He wants to donate a large portion, pay out investors, and provide for his family. But he has also planned something curious. He wants to use part of the money to turn the landfill into a park and build a Bitcoin mining facility there, powered by green energy. It sounds almost poetic. The site of his greatest loss is to become a place of the future. But the reality currently looks grim. The city has tightened access to the landfill. Fences, cameras, security guards. No one gets in. James can only stare at the hills of trash from the outside, knowing that somewhere down there, maybe just 5 or 10 meters deep, lies the key to a life of absolute luxury. Psychologists would say that James is stuck in a phase of grief. He cannot let go. And who could blame him? Imagine you have a lottery ticket with the winning numbers, but it fell into a storm drain and you can see it, but not reach it. Every day the internet reminds you of the prize. Every day you see headlines like Bitcoin reaches new all-time high. For James, that is no reason for joy, but pure torture. Some people on the internet make fun of him. In forums, they call him the man who threw away his fortune. But deep down, we all feel for him. We have all lost something important or made a stupid mistake. It's just that our mistake usually doesn't have 9 zeros at the end. The question that remains is, what would you do? How far would you go? Would you give up after 10 years of fighting windmills? Or would you keep going, hire lawyers, seek investors, and dedicate your entire life to this one thing? James Howells has decided. He is not giving up. His Twitter banner long bore the slogan, "Never give up." But whether this fighting spirit will make him the richest man in Newport or a broken man in the end, only time will tell. Maybe the hard drive will be found in 100 years by archaeologists of the future, wondering why we were so obsessed with digital money. Or maybe it will simply continue to rot until nothing is left of the data but rust and dust. Until then, James Howells remains the man who packed the most expensive trash bag in the world. So, folks, if you're having a bad day today because Bitcoin has dropped in the last few days, always remember, at least you didn't throw away 8,000 Bitcoins. And if you're asking yourself now, okay, but how do I do it right? Don't worry. In the next video, we will dedicate ourselves to exactly this topic: cold wallets, seed phrases, and how to store Bitcoin so that they would survive even a nuclear war or a Welsh landfill. You don't want to miss that.